There we go.
Great. And then do we need to leave 30 seconds or so until it picks up on YouTube, or what do you think, Sophie?
It's live right now, so we're good to go.
It's live right now. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I will call this meeting to order, and we acknowledge with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Quellahem, Bowen Island. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality Special Council meeting of January 30th, 2023. And thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to introduce the other elected members of Bowen Island Council here this morning who have joined us. So starting on my right, I'm just going on my own Zoom link here. And for anyone following on our live stream, we have Councillor Judy Getty, Councillor Sue Ellen Fast, Councillor Alison Morse, Councillor John Saunders, Councillor Tim Wake, and joining by iPhone, we have Councillor Alex Jurgensen. We're also joined by members of our professional staff here today, including our, I'll just go in order by this Brady Bunch screen here, our corporate officer, Sophie Insignia, Kristen Watson, our Chief Financial Officer, and Liam Edwards, our Chief Administrative Officer. And also in this meeting will likely be our Director of Engineering, Patrick Graham. This meeting is being recorded, and if members of the public speak during the public comment section of the meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and on our YouTube channel, which is being streamed right now. That said, I will look to our agenda here, and item one is an approval of the agenda. I will look for a motion to approve the agenda for the January 30th, 2023 special council meeting. So moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, carry. Item two, business arising from the minutes. Just let me organize my screen here. I'm getting used to these digital meetings, digital council meetings with reports and everything open. So our first item of business 2.1, which is reconsideration of resolution number 2225 made at the January 23rd, 2023 regular council meeting. And as a reminder, this resolution states that council approved the expenditure of $190,000 to complete the detailed design, cost estimates, and environmental monitoring, assessment, and permitting for the Public Works service yard upgrade in advance of the 2023 budget approval, and that council directs staff to advance the public communication and other work required to support a loan authorization bylaw and referendum to obtain elector assent for borrowing to finance construction of the Public Works yard service yard upgrades. That council directs staff to coordinate a site visit with council to review the state of the existing facilities and the required improvements. So in a reconsideration of a resolution, it comes back in front of council as if it's been moved and seconded, but no vote has taken place. And what this will do, it allows council to ask questions, debate, and vote on the resolution again. And reconsiderations are an important part of the process. I think just to ensure that our decision-making is as sharp and as clear as it can be. And as reconsideration was ordered by the mayor, I guess I'll speak to the resolution before us. So in opening, I think that the unanimous vote at our meeting last Monday night speaks to an urgent and immediate need to take care of our public works staff. Our Director of Engineering, in addition to the stark images he presented to us of the utter disrepair and decay of the works yard, states in the conclusion of his report that Bowen Island Municipality has a responsibility to provide a safe and healthy workplace for municipal employees that enable them to deliver the best value service to the public. And I couldn't agree more. I think that council would be unanimous in the sentiment that we need to take care of our public employees. The day after our January 23rd meeting, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a train. That was a long meeting. That was like 4.5 hours of a lot of business taken care of. But as I was driving in the Cove, I stopped by the works yard and I was greeted by a smile by one of our foremen who toured me around the site, and the buildings were as bad as I'd been told. And yet for a surprise visit by the mayor, I was really actually impressed by how our staff were still caring for the site. Everything was clean. The garage was super well ordered and everything put away. And despite a lack of investment on the site, it was clear that our works folks, I think, were doing the best they could with an area that required investment. So that said, I think what's come before us, and what we have to realize, that we have two separate issues here. So first and foremost, we've got like a near emergency and health liability in working conditions for our staff. And secondly, there's the need to provide capital investment in a long-term upgrade of our works facilities. And I think council may wish to address these two issues, one of a short-term solution and second of a long-term investment separately. As I'm, not sure if it's fair to our staff who have been, waiting since the 2021 budget process and will look forward to an ascent for completion and construction before they can, have a safe and healthy place to eat their lunch in, take their breaks in, and use the washroom in. So if the short-term solution is addressed immediately through temporary crew space, this removes, I think, the emergency thinking that led council to approve a $4 million capital project without the oversight of our finance committee, and that's extracurricular to our budget process. This emergency exists, as I read it, because this was a project initiated in 2021, but has been stalled for other budgetary concerns. So I think that we need to solve this pressing need to ensure our staff's well-being and safety, while at the same time creating room to, as a new council, deliberate and weigh the long-term solution in context with our other priorities. Our new council's just come out of many orientation sessions in our strategic planning with the knowledge that there's going to be many asks for additional operating funding. We know this to be true. We know there's significant financial gaps in existing projects. We know there's tens of millions of dollars of basic infrastructure to repair, build, or maintain this term. And in 2022, our debt servicing was predicted to triple, and this is before any of the major budget impacts have found a way to be funded. So we know that there's going to be more referendums for borrowing on the horizon. We know there's going to be a lot more spending on the horizon. And I think it's ultimately on council to ensure the fiscal responsibility of our municipality and ensure that we're using our budgetary processes. We know our tax burden is high. It's going to get higher, especially when the economy is contracting, interest rates are rising, inflation is high. So I'd like to know that for this project, we've reviewed it well, we retain enough oversight over it, and make sure that whatever we do serves our community and staff into the future. So to that end, I will move that we strike the motion as written and replace it with the following. That council direct staff to source and cost preliminary options for immediate interim lunch, office, and washroom space for public works staff, and present these to council for decision no later than the February 27th, 2023 regular council meeting. That consideration of the proposed service yard upgrades is presented at the January 23rd, 2023 regular council meeting be included as part of the 2023 budget process. That the proposed service yard upgrades and their financial considerations be referred to the Finance Advisory Committee for comment as part of the 2023 budget process. And that council directs staff to coordinate a site visit with council to review the state of existing facilities and the required improvements, including the Mount Gardner and Athletic Park works yards. I can put that on screen if councilors would like to see that.
If you would, please.
Yeah. Where are we here? All right. I believe that's up there. Can you see that? If I zoom it in.
That's good.
Great.
Okay. So is there a seconder for this motion? So we can open it for discussion. Seconded by Councillor Saunders. And just to speak to the motion, so the intent here is to separate the need for immediate space for our staff to ensure their physical safety and ultimately their mental health as well, by directing staff to source options for temporary space, and that we include the actual capital project, which is going to require an ascent, which is a $4 million project, as part of our 2023 budget process, that we leverage our financial advisory committee as part of this process, and then the extension of that last motion, the site visit, is to include both the site on Mount Gardner as well as the secondary site off of Salal. So I went to both sites over the last few days and took some drone pictures of them. And I do have questions, and I think it would be good for staff in the consideration of a multi-million-dollar project to look at both sites and the implications of our works yards as a whole. Councillor Geddy. Oh, and for discussion, I will ask that councillors use the raise hand function. It's much easier. It pops you to the top of my screen here, and I can see the speaker list in order. Councillor Geddy.
The second sentence in that, the consideration of the proposed service yard upgrades as presented at the January 23 meeting be included as part of the 23 budget process. What does that mean?
Sorry, it should read be so as presented. So the presentation that we got, including the design elements and everything that's included in the
It was
in the project.
Sorry, it was 190,000 to get back into the process that had been put on hold, but
Yes.
it was, the design was the $4 million, and
Yes.
or the 3 million for the building and the extra million for all of the other additional. So basically, we're trying to look at the 4 million as part of the 23 budget process.
So I think it's the entire project as part of the budget process. So what council effectively resolved on Monday was to in a single resolution was to approve the design, approve the $4 million project, and approve the drafting of a bylaw for assent. And we've done that extracurricular to the budget without knowing what any of the other impacts of capital projects and spending and operating budget will be. So I believe that this, and it's open for amendment, but I believe what this would allow for as inclusion in the 2023 budget would be a discussion of, is this the design that we want? Is this the money that we want to spend? Do we actually want to do an assent? And I also believe that's important that we actually go see the works yards prior to making any decision on this, to get a sense of what the site looks like and where this stuff is actually going.
Okay.
Councillor Morris.
Okay, couple of questions. The timing, the walkabout scheduled for late February, and yet you're wanting a decision no later than the February 27th regular council meeting. So walkabout needs to be pushed up. The other is the second paragraph. It is confusing. I mean, maybe it just should be very simple. The consideration of the proposed service yard upgrades be included as part of the 2023 budget process, and forget about what was presented, because that's implying that we're going to agree to what was presented on January 23rd. And I was sort of under the impression that, or maybe took it on good faith when we did the last resolution, that we were going to be able to weigh in on just what was going to be built, because there's options for modular and prefab and already made, I'll use the word Britco trailers, but that's not, quite, I mean, the golf course is, they're trailers, but they were clad, and so they look just like any other building, and it certainly wasn't an expensive process. And then the other question is just process. This is changing the resolution that was passed, so it seems to me we would then have to rescind the other resolution. And do we not need a motion to reconsider that resolution as well?
So maybe in reverse order, the mayor can order a reconsideration of anything within 30 days. So there is not a motion needed, which is why this is open and before council again.
Good. Okay, forgot that one.
The and I'll have staff jump in here to correct me if I'm wrong, but my reading of the documents, because we're at a 50% design and the cost estimate is for that design, that the interpretation is that there's not a whole lot of flexibility to change to a different option, like a prefab option, or exactly what the value engineering is going to be, as well as the actual layout of the site. So the motion as it reads is going to move to 100% of the design completion as it is, with value engineering within that existing design, and the money to be borrowed to complete that. And I'll let our Chief Administrative Officer jump in.
Thank you, Mayor. I just noticed that our engineer also raised his hand at the same time, and he'd probably speak to it better than I. So if that's all right, I would defer to Patrick.
Oh, I just wanted
Director of Engineering.
I just wanted to clarify that the process that we've gone through was to look at essentially the program and space requirements, and to work with the design consultant team on the various site and building configurations to provide that space. And so what we've arrived at in the 50% design essentially shows, preliminary building design with those spaces incorporated in the how that building's delivered, whether it's a purpose-built structure, which is how the cost estimate is, how the costs were estimated at the Class C level, the 50% design level, or if it's delivered as a prefabricated or a modular type construction. Those are construction methods and details that could come out through the remaining detailed design process. So those would be, if that was the intention of authorizing the funds required to essentially restart the design process, that would be one of the first questions we would be asking the design consultants is, okay, what is the most cost-effective and efficient way to provide these space needs that we've outlined here? And they're not, extravagant space needs. It's basic stuff, but it is, a fair amount of heated interior space, in addition to the other spaces that, like the material storage that we went through as well. Another part of that process would be to confirm how the works would be constructed and what the interim arrangements would need to be. So, the time frame I outlined at the last meeting was, going through this design process would give us the certainty or better certainty on how much money is needed. That would lead into a public process to authorize the borrowing, and then then tendering, and that gets you into construction towards the start of the year. At some point in there needs to be some temporary arrangements made where staff can work out of the space while construction is going on for the 6 to 8 months that are going to be required to complete the project. So one thing we've been talking about is there, if that involved bringing in a trailer somewhere, perhaps that's something we could do sooner than later, with in mind that we would be needing that in any case, ideally at the start of 2024 when construction gets underway. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Councillor Getty?
I guess what struck me after the meeting on Monday, we had the first draft of our strategic planning, and one of the principles that we've been talking about is to try and sort out and get a better handle on existing infrastructure expenses, and to finish those, or at least try to finish those and fill in the gaps, and not take on any new projects. That would have I mean, there's going to be other emergencies that may come up, but so while I understand, it seems to me that while it may not, what we need to think through is, while it may not be best practice to have something that is temporary, this $4 million is probably ending up with a permanent structure that would last 100 years. Where at a time when building expenses and borrowing money is at its highest. And we have to think through the pros and cons of all of that. If there's something temporary, not 6 months, but maybe something that is, I don't know, less than the 100-year building, that we have to, I think, be responsible and see what those options are. So my hesitation afterwards, and I was reacting, I know that personally I was reacting to the conditions of the public works people working under, that's something that I think is an incredible liability for them and for us, and that it's an embarrassment when we've got all these other programs that are, and buildings that are new and fancy and huge. And so somehow or other, I wanted to open it up again. I felt like I was locked into a $4 million deal that we couldn't necessarily afford. Well, I know we can't afford, and it's not necessarily the best solution for the situation that we're in now. So I'm in favor of opening it up and trying to go through it, but I'm also very concerned that we find something sooner, much sooner, rather than later for the staff. And I think this takes care of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Councillor Wake?
So really following up on Councillor Getty's comments, my main concern was, I think like all of us, just how can we make things better for our staff very quickly, while continuing on with the larger process, but also and I asked about, a steel building for the main building, and Patrick answered, but I just feel like we need to know a little more about the process of looking at that. And I'm thinking about the fire hall. At the end of the day, we built the fire hall, if I understand it right, for $4 million, and we're talking about $4 million ultimately for this project, which includes the crew quarters. But I've just, I need to see a little more in terms of the design process, and also in terms of the final design. If there isn't a way to reduce that by using a prefab steel building, and we could still perhaps, we could still bring in something temporary right away, so the crew would have space to have lunch and the kitchen and bathrooms. That could be a separate trailer while the main building gets built, and maybe that separate trailer is more of a permanent solution too, or maybe it becomes part of the bigger building. But I think my big concern was, can we look at the numbers of what happened at how the fire hall was built, and how we might sort of replicate that process on a much smaller scale, and result in some cost savings. And so that was my thought.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Councillor Saunders, I did see your hand up at one point.
Yeah, it was, and Councillor Getty and Councillor Wake kind of addressed it, so there's no point in me repeating their comments other than me to say I support the motion that you put forward here. It does sever the two processes we need, one the immediate solution and one longer term that we need to address. So that's fine with me.
Thank you. Councillor Fast?
Thanks. I just want to say, as somebody who's been on council before, I have seen lots of the thinking and design drawings over a couple of terms already. And I just, I think this project is really important. It's, I think staff can bring us the cost savings. I'm not an expert on buildings or how to, what the benefits of a metal building might be over what time span and all that kind of thing, except that I know our staff are. And I've worked in lots of outdoor settings where trailers and outdoor sheds and things get so run down that core services get impaired. And I think in terms of cost savings, I'd be thinking about our equipment and rolling stock, and can we get to emergencies when they need to be addressed and all that kind of thing. That can staff do their work, as well as staff working conditions. I think we need to provide a safe working environment. Anyway, I'm concerned that this motion will could delay things even further, even though it talks about the temporary getting the better working conditions into place quickly. So anyway, I just I want construction to start in 2024. And so my question for staff here is there anything in this motion that would potentially delay construction?
Mr. Edwards?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not responding to Councillor Fast's question. I'm not sure that this would delay construction. I think that it would still fit within the current plan. But the one question I have is actually for our Director of Engineering, because not having seen any of this prior to this meeting, I would like to get some clarity as to whether or not we coming back by February 27th is a realistic timeline, because we have to have the agenda published a week in advance as well. And so it just, I just would want to make sure that we're not putting our Director of Engineering and his staff in a jam to come back with these options or prices for this option in that first paragraph of the proposed motion. So Patrick, or not sure you're able to speak to that, but
Yeah, I sure I can speak to that, and just first wanted to address the question about time frame. So it could delay construction in that what we presented at the last council meeting was based on carrying on with the design more or less right away in order to look at some of these questions about what is the most cost-effective way to provide for the operational needs and program needs and spaces that we require, so that we can get to firm budget requirements in May, June, and then move into that loan authorization process. And then you have time for once funds are approved for tendering and then moving into construction. So if we don't get going with the design and we push that off, then it pushes everything else off as well. And that was really the intention of requesting the 190 right away. So then back to the question about for the interim arrangements, figuring all of that out by essentially February 13th. We may not have all of the final numbers and details sorted out by then. We could certainly provide what the options are, what the ideas are, and essentially we do know that we could bring a trailer in, you can have, we probably wouldn't have the time to really get at Tim's question earlier about, is this a trailer that's something, more durable and large enough that it would be, it would form part of the finished solution, or just something more temporary that would be getting us by for a short time. So there's still going to be questions around that. There's the possibility that right now we have the utilities crew using the upstairs of the library. We have put a trailer on a small trailer at the water treatment plant site for the purpose of having a secondary base for that crew. It's the only reason it's not being used is because of the issues we have. There's no water right now. There's the issues we have with the water plant, which we're expecting to sort out quite soon. So that would leave the upper floor of the library available. It's again not ideal, as I explained at the last meeting. There's a lot of time lost in terms of having your base where your equipment and your gear is versus at an offsite location. There's a lot more back and forth, and everybody loses operationally productive time that way. And there may be other options. We'd have to look at, well, where do we put if we're going to bring a trailer in, where do we put it? We do have the issue about the current site being, I explained the contaminated site issues a bit at the last meeting. One of the implications of that is we can't get building permits for that site, so we'd have to work around that somehow. Potentially the site where the staff park right now, there's a structure that used to be used and is no longer really serving a current function that could be removed. A trailer could be put there, or staff could park along Mount Gardner Road. That's one of the options. So getting back to the question, we could have options. There may be gaps in the necessary details and costs if we're shooting for having that sorted out by essentially 2 weeks from now.
Thank you, Director. And just as I see no hands up, a comment to you, Patrick. I think what you've outlined, particularly in terms of where staff are on top of the library at the water treatment plant and some of the challenges in this site, I think all of us, I'll speak for myself, but I believe this has been echoed in council as well, really understand the tight position that you've been in. And ultimately there's a desire to provide a good, healthy, workable facility and structure for staff. So I just, I really appreciate that. Councillor Jurgensen?
I just wanted to clarify that my own understanding is that what is being asked for here is the 190,000 to continue with the design process, not to greenlight the entire capital project as a whole. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm correct.
The motion as it reads now would put that $190,000 into the budget process. So there's four sort of clauses to the motion. One asks for an immediate, some immediate options within a month to figure out some temporary space for our public works staff, especially given the severity and possible liability of those spaces right now. The second clause is, second and third clauses ask that the larger project, including design and all those pieces, be included as part of the 2023 budget process. Is right now they're extracurricular to that, and that's including a referral to the Finance Advisory Committee. And then the last clause is very similar to the original, where staff is going to coordinate with council to undertake a site visit of both public works yards.
Thank you. My question was actually more for sorry, Patrick, when it came down
Okay.
to trying to understand what his team is asking for at this point. And I was just clarifying that that was the 190,000 at this point. Sorry.
Yes, what we requested at the last council meeting was approval for the 190,000 to advance the environmental assessment, monitoring, reporting, and to advance the design. The funds for construction would be subject to the borrowing process, the loan authorization process, and would be, what we propose is that would be included in the 2024 capital budget.
Thank you. And thank you also, Mayor Leonard, for your explanation of the various clauses in the motion currently before us.
Welcome. Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, just again, for clarity, I guess. Would this $190,000 that was asked for, would this include the essentially clause 1 there for interim, short-term, short or medium-term accommodation here? Is that part of it, or would that be a completely separate item we'd be talking about?
No, it would include that, part of completing the design for redeveloping the yard with, the spaces and facilities that we need would be to ensure that operations can continue through the process of constructing those facilities. And so there needs to be some temporary arrangements in any case during construction. And it does make sense to, it potentially makes sense to advance that sooner than later. And that's one of the options that we'd be looking at in response to that first paragraph.
Just as a point of information to the director, so in those temporary, the costing of those temporary facilities, I noted that there's in the cost estimates, there's a large section of exclusions, which kind of fall outside the 2.92 million that Hanscom has provided us. Do you have a sense of what the total cost of the exclusions are, including temporary facilities, and how that would fit into what our ultimate ask is? Because the pieces that are excluded from the cost estimate, include things, as I'm reading here, the demolition disposal of buildings. I'm sure it wouldn't include the temporary facilities for staff, anything like furniture or appliances, all of the soft costs. So I'm curious as to sort of how those exclusions have been provided for, and then, as construction happens and those temporary facilities happen, what the ultimate cost and impact on the budget and borrowing would be.
Yeah, the intention was to encompass the exclusions in the amount of contingency that's being carried for the project. So, and some of those items in there, like demolition and disposal of existing buildings listed under exclusions, it probably shouldn't be. When you go through the line items of their actual cost estimate, they have included an amount for removal of the existing building. But certainly there are elements, if we need additional furniture and equipment, we can likely reuse a lot of what we have available at this site and others. And in terms of the temporary facilities, yeah, the intention was, it's not listed in this cost estimate. The intention is that would have been encompassed under the contingency as well. And the intent was to put forward something that was representative of what we could be expect to need and spend to get what we to get a finished product.
I suppose maybe what I'm a little bit confused about is that contingencies generally in a project are for unforeseen circumstances that you can't probably predict, but all of these are actually spelled out and could be budgeted for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's part of the design process, is to get more details on all of these things, and also the core of the project itself. And as you get more details, the amount that you're carrying for contingency. So if we're carrying close to $1 million now for contingency, that can be reduced as we have some more certainty about what exactly the needs are.
Point of order, Chair.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Getty.
Are we talking about the resolution, or are we talking about the discussion that we want to have once we have the resolution?
That is a very good point. Your point is well taken. So we will come back to the resolution as stated. Thank you. Councilor Wake.
Thank you, Mayor Leonard, and a question for Director Graham. And kind of an apology. We're digging into details here that I think are more granular than what's reflected in our concerns here for wanting to do this. And it came up from a pretty high level lack of understanding of, for example, from the images that were part of your presentation, I presumed, perhaps incorrectly, that it was not going to be a steel building. It was a prefab steel building, which I think would go up reasonably quickly, but it was actually going to be, a design and constructed building, for example, more like the community, the process and the community center. And reflecting on the fact that we have the existing fire hall that was just built and the fire hall on the west side, which are both prefab steel buildings, if I understand it right, and I'm not even sure if I've got that right. But so my question really, and we probably should have taken the time to ask these questions on Monday. My question was really, okay, have we ruled out the possibility for something less expensive in terms of that main building, and how much of that $4 million is the building? And I guess that's the other part, is how much of that is remediation and preparing the site and that kind of thing. So and perhaps I didn't read that well, but in terms of the big pieces, are you still considering prefab steel buildings?
Yes, I think, like I said earlier, the 50%, approximately 50% design, preliminary design level is mainly for identifying the spaces and the program needs, and how those spaces are delivered. The construction method of the building, that is something that we intend to pursue with the consultant, with the architect-led team. And so no, it hasn't been ruled out that it would be that prefabricated structures would be part of the construction method. There was some other aspects. Was that there was some other aspects to your question there too?
Well, it was the breakdown.
Okay, right.
How much of the $4 million is the actual construction of the buildings?
Let me just pull
Sorry,
up the.
can I raise another point of order?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Getty.
These are all good questions and it's all a really good discussion. And I think that's why we want to open it again. And I envy Councillor Fast and Morris in terms of having been through lots of details in the past, but the rest of us haven't. And I think that all of these questions and all of this discussion that we're having is what this resolution is trying to open up again. So, we did something, I don't want to call it knee jerk, but it was a long meeting. It was tired and it was emotional in terms of caring about what was happening. And I think that this is trying to give us an opportunity to reopen and have all of these questions and answers and discussion and sort some things out. We may end up with, we want to have something that's going to last 100 years and is going to be the state of the art and, is all very skookum or not. So that's what this is trying to open up again, I think. So I'd like us to get to the question. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to deal with. And we're getting deep into the kinds of things that we want to talk about in terms of this project. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve with this resolution. So if we can call the question at some point.
Yes, I think your point is well taken. I note that all councillors have had the opportunity to speak once, and the motion speaks generally to having some interim space and options for interim space presented immediately, and then folding the larger project, the larger $4 million project, into some budget oversight and control in our 2023 budget, and then seeing a staff visit. So I will call the question. All in
Excuse
favor?
me, I had my hand up.
Okay, so if there's no objection, we'll let Councillor Moore speak for a second time.
Well, I was suggesting an amendment to the motion when I first spoke. And I would also like to clarify that we haven't done a lot of discussion about what was going to be down here or layout or anything else. So I'm quite happy with this motion, but I think we should take out the words as presented at the January 23rd, 2023 regular council meeting, because that implies that we're only going to look at the upgrades as presented, no other options. And I don't want to restrict this to just what was as presented. So I would
agree,
move
and I'll second. Yep, I'll second. Any discussion on the motion of removing as presented at the January 23rd, 2023 regular council meeting? Right, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. So that new clause reads that consideration of the proposed service yard upgrades be included as part of the 2023 budget process. Okay, back to the main motion. I've called the question. All councillors have had the opportunity to speak.
Just a second. I'm hearing Alex trying to raise his hand, I think.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yes, so
stating I was in favor, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. I will note that generally procedure bylaw, we've been a bit flexible, but all councillors have had the opportunity to speak, which allows for the calling of the question. So all in favor of the resolution as stated, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion
I'm
carries.
opposed. Yes.
Councillor Fast opposing. Okay, and then back to new business, item 3.1, that council move to a closed meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 91 E and K of the community charter. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could be reasonably expected to harm the interest of the municipality. And K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are at the preliminary stages, and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interest of the municipality if they were held in public. Is there a mover for this resolution? Councillor Getty, seconded by
Second.
Counselor Jurgensen. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, carries unanimously. So we are adjourned. I will suggest that we take a quick 5